Vancouver Police today is releasing video of an assault that occurred December 13th in the downtown core, and we're asking anybody with information to give us a call, come forward to help move our investigation along. This assault occurred on December 13th. There was a homeless woman who was sleeping on Hamilton Street outside the Queen Elizabeth Theatre when an unknown man approached her, paced around her for quite some time, and then appears to have deliberately set fire to this woman's belongings. Now, as the woman slept under blankets and belongings, the fire smoldered for several minutes before fully engulfing her and lighting her blankets on fire. Fortunately, it appears that she was able to just get up in the nick of time before escaping serious injury. And she walked away. It does not appear that she had serious physical injuries, but we haven't been able to locate her yet, and we need the public's help to identify her as well as identify the man who's responsible for this. Obviously, this is a shocking and despicable assault that occurred against a vulnerable and marginalized member of our community, and we really would like to speak to anybody who has any information about what happened. The victim was a woman in her 30s. She was sleeping on Hamilton Street, which is on the west side of Queen Elizabeth Theatre. She was sleeping under a covered area on the sidewalk. She'd been sleeping for quite some time, for over an hour, when this unidentified man walked up to her. He did pace around her for some time before deliberately lighting her belongings on fire. After lighting her belongings on fire, he appears to have walked away with a basket of her belongings. And we know that because it appears that he went to a nearby building or vestibule and sorted through those belongings. And we have included a still image of the suspect for news agencies to use. The victim didn't report the incident to police. She appears to have stood up and walked away. She is a woman in her 30s. She has dark shoulder-length hair, and at the time was wearing a gray full-length button-up jacket. However, I suppose because she's was homeless and sleeping on the street, she did have several layers of clothing on as well. The suspect also appears to be a white man between 35 and 50 years old. He stands between 5'5" and 5'10" tall, and he was wearing a unique black and white Oakland Raiders jacket at the time of the crime. Now, investigators want to speak to the victim. They would like to identify the suspect, and anybody who has any information is asked to call the VPD Major Crimes Section, 604-717-2541. Alternatively, anonymous calls can be made to Crime Stoppers, 1-800-669-8477. Do you guys have any questions in the room about this incident?
Yeah, how did VPD end up knowing about this in the first place? The victim didn't come forward, just
The incident was not reported to the Vancouver Police Department for several hours. It was a security guard who was doing his rounds at approximately 9 o'clock the next morning who noticed charred debris. And that security guard reviewed video cameras from around and observed the assault and then reported it to the police. So unfortunately, we did not know it happened at the time, and we weren't notified until several hours later.
I mean, we're about a month old now, but no word on the street of this incident actually happening. No one.
Our investigators have been working on this file since day one, since December 13th. They've taken a number of investigative steps. Unfortunately, we have not been able to identify the suspect. We have not been able to identify the victim. And this is the reason why we're appealing to the public now for any assistance that the public can provide. It's very telling video. The pictures do show the suspect in a very distinctive jacket. So we're hoping somebody out there knows who he is and maybe has contact with the victim and can encourage her to contact the VPD. Likewise, if this did occur in the downtown core, so security guards, loss prevention officers, homeless outreach advocates, community advocates, if anybody knows who these people are, give us a call or encourage them to give us a call so that we can move this investigation forward.
No way, because we don't know who the victim or the suspect is. No way to know if they knew each other or.
I don't know what the relationship was, if any relationship. And that is something that we are trying to determine, which is why we are now appealing to the public for any tips that can be provided for who these people are.
What happens in a case like this? If you can find the suspect and not the victim, what would happen? Would there still be charges to lay? Or?
I don't want to get too far ahead and project what the investigative steps are. We do want the victim to come forward. Firstly, to make sure that she's okay. She appears to have escaped physical injury. However, you can only imagine what the emotional toll would be if you're. I mean, this is a woman who is sleeping on the sidewalk. She's obviously vulnerable and disadvantaged and marginalized to begin with. Otherwise, she wouldn't be sleeping on the sidewalk. So because she is vulnerable and this person who appears out of nowhere, lights are on fire, it's doubly concerning for us. Obviously, it's concerning anytime somebody is assaulted and we do our utmost to solve those crimes, but it's doubly concerning when a crime like this happens against a person who's vulnerable and disadvantaged. So again, would like anybody who knows the victim, or if the victim is watching, to contact our investigators and help us move this investigation forward. Okay, no more questions in the room. Okay, so *1 to get in the queue. Susanna, do we have? Okay, we have somebody in the queue. Okay, just before you ask your question, can you just tell me who you are, who you work for, and make sure you're not on hands-free, please? Go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, it's Maria Weinberg with BC.
Hi, Maria.
The video segments released, they show when the woman is awake and walking around the fire at this point, which is clearly grown in the video, and then it stops there. And I noticed in your release you referenced that she was able to put out the flames. Can you tell me what happened after that moment that we don't see?
Okay, so let me just clarify. The victim was sleeping under her blankets. The fire smoldered for several minutes and before it fully engulfed her. From the video, we can see that the victim does stand up and appears to frantically try to put out the flames. And you can see part of her jacket is actually appears to be smoldering. Ultimately, Vancouver Fire did attend and finished putting out the fire. So it would probably be inaccurate, Maria, to say that the woman put out the fire, and more accurate to say that she, as you can see in the video, she stands up and seems to kick at the fire or attempts to stomp it out before leaving.
Okay, so the Vancouver Fire Department attended and put out what was left of the fire. I take it at that point that the victim had left?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and I also wanted to ask you, is it concerning for police that, that someone who has something happen to them like this, which is so, obviously so upsetting and disturbing, has not, for whatever reason, come forward for help?
Well, certainly we would like to hear from this victim, first and foremost, to ensure that she's okay, and secondly, to move the investigation forward. Victims of crime come forward to the police at different times and for different reasons. Some victims never come forward, Maria. Some victims come forward right away, and some victims wait an undetermined period of time. So I can't assess or judge why this victim has decided to this point not to come forward. However, I'm here today to encourage her or anybody who knows her to contact the VPD, to speak to our investigators so that we can advance this investigation and solve the crime.
So there was obviously, there was someone who witnessed the fire, I take it then, if Vancouver Police, I'm sorry, Vancouver Fire was called?
I don't know specifically how Vancouver Fire was called.